One of the common challenges I see women facing in their careers is this imposter syndrome, this feeling of I'm not good enough, and this fear of being found out for being a fraud. And I can very much relate to this in my own journey. And, I have to admit, this is something that I sometimes struggle with because I think when you're always growing, when you're always learning, when you're always on that growth edge, you're going to be in uncomfortable situations. And that feeling of security isn't always going to be there. So if you can relate to this week's episode is for you. So, what is this feeling like a fraud? What is this imposter syndrome? I believe that, our brains haven't really evolved from prehistoric ages. We have a reptilian brain. We are hardwired for survival. What does that mean? That means that we are hardwired to stay safe, to fit into communities, and to not go out there and be bold and, risk being rejected. Whether that is in the form of putting your hand up in a meeting and expressing your opinion, whether that's quitting your job and starting a business when you come from a family of lawyers and doctors. It comes from that reptilian brain that is simply trying to keep you safe. Now, we have to know what we're dealing with, and there are tools and tricks to work with your brain to be able to have the courage to step out in spite of how you're naturally hardwired. And I'll come on to that in future episodes, so do stay tuned. But before I go there, I really want to affirm you and assure you that everybody feels this way. Everybody feels like a fraud. Everybody feels like an imposter. One of the great things about coaching and the work that I do is I really have the privilege of having a front seat in my clients' lives. And I've had the privilege of coaching women from, analysts working their way up to heads of departments and heads of regions who are about to retire. And what I've seen, particularly as I work with women, is that everybody feels like a fraud. Everybody feels like an imposter and feels like they're going to be found out, right? And so you're not alone in that feeling. And I just want you to know and accept in this week's episode that that is part of your reptilian brain trying to keep you safe. It's making you conform. It's helping you to not rock the boat, and it's helping you stay safe. At the same time, if you're feeling conflicted because you want to go out there and you want to do something else, you've got to recognize that you actually have a conscious choice to work through that and work with that part of your brain. And I love the work of Elizabeth Gilbert, where she talks a lot about fear and how it holds us back. And she has this beautiful analogy in her book, Big Magic, which I highly recommend. Elizabeth Gilbert, same author as Eat, Pray, Love, which is the famous book and movie that most of us know. And she talks about fear and how it's always going to be there and it's always going to be present. So the purpose is not to fight fear, but to know that it's going to be there and know how to deal with it. So what the analogy that she shares, and I want to share with you today so that you can start to recognize when your fear is showing up and trying to keep you safe, is that imagine you're on a road trip, right? And you're driving the car and you've got the radio on and you're headed on your destination, right? So you've got some career goals. Maybe you want to climb the ladder and become, a director by a certain stage. Maybe you actually want to be launching your side business. Maybe you want to quit and become a freelancer. Whatever it is, chances are there's a journey there and a path that you're going to follow, right? But fear will be there. And you know what it's like, right? I call it the chief risk officer. It's telling you, oh, it's not safe. Why would you give up that steady paycheck? Why rock the boat? What if your boss thinks you're an idiot? You shouldn't speak before you're spoken to, some of these old limiting stories that can hold us back. So the way to think about that fear and that reptilian brain that likes to spring up when we are at our growth edge and going for those big career dreams and goals is to think of it sitting in the back seat. So yeah, it can be talking in the back and be kind of annoying and have a chit-chat voice, but it's never going to be in the driving seat. It's not going to be able to turn on the radio. It's not going to be able to actually affect you in the driving seat. So I hope that analogy helps. And I also want to remind you that you are enough with what you have right now. This feeling of being a fraud or being an imposter is about, I believe, the fact that we're not good enough and that we don't have enough value to add and that we don't feel like we're really that special. And I see this with the clients that I work with. They really downplay their strengths. They downplay their gifts as if it's nothing. But the true fact is the sheer probability of you even being on this earth is like 1 in what is it, 1 in 400 trillion or something, or even more. And the fact that, your mum, that your dad, and that sperm, that egg is such a rarity. And the fact that you're here on this planet right now is such a gift. So remember that you're a miracle, and that everybody's a miracle, right? That line from A Course in Miracles, all of us are special and none of us are special. So treat your life with reverence. Like, this is a gift. The fact that you're here right now is such a beautiful gift. And, your presence to the whatever it is that's going on in your life, and the awareness of what's working, what's not, is your first step to starting to create the life that you want. And I'll talk more about that in next week's episode, so stay tuned. But just know that that desire that you have in your mind, that idea, it is there for a reason. So trust yourself, trust that you're here for a purpose, for a reason, and that only you can do what you're here to do. The fact that you're born in a certain country, to certain parents with certain skill sets and certain interests is a gift. So please, please remember that. So I would love to hear from you. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to this imposter syndrome? What is it holding you back from, and what is it that you really want? Leave a comment but for me below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, there is no one in the world who can do what you do the way you do it, and I'll catch you next week.